Okay, so we were just talking about this new term for what we've been calling abortion, and now there's this late term abortion. There's a new term, or actually, it's a very old and it's a historic term. It's called infanticide, and is basically allowing parents to kill the child after its birth. And so this term is really important. I want to explain this to you because for those who are students of history, infanticide is one of the last practices a society induces before they collapse. Now, let me be a little more specific. A leading society like America and ancient Greece and Rome and so forth, those types of societies have literally induced these types of things, but they're not ones that really rise up. So who cares about history and this big coincidence of the collapsing of societies? I got to say this too, because there are a few things that are induced in the very last stages of a society as it rises to its pinnacle and then starts to fall. And so embracing of sexual perversions is another one of those practices before a society falls. If you've ever read, and I'd highly recommend, go get Ludwig von Mises' book on socialism. Believe it or not, he actually goes through a lot of history. He talks about different societies and so forth, because there have been many societies that have succumbed to socialism. And this book points out that the societies that fall from these types of things never rise from the ashes as a societal leader again. And so that's the important thing. When Greece fell, did Greece ever become a leader in society ever again? I mean, they were such, leaders in thought. No, they became the footstool for who? They became the footstool for Rome. And so if you look at Rome, when Rome, or go back to Egypt, look at all of these societies that fall. They've never become a leader of societal, importance ever again. Now, I will say Greece did have and was integral in providing, like Cicero and so forth. They were integral in providing, really good enlightenment and thought that was brought into the Roman Empire. But the Roman Empire, very similar to the Egyptian Empire, went a lot longer than most empires. And that was just because, for whatever purpose, they kind of took a long road to get to that point of debauchery. Not that they weren't bad, but I think that if you look at Rome when it fell, it actually became the footstool for some of the different European states. More specifically, I can point to Spain. Spain and the Spain Armada, they were the empire that was ruling Europe and what was considered the world empire at the time, until somebody knocked them off the perch, and that was Britain. Now, the question is somebody starts really looking at empires and everything else, is Britain the fallen footstool of America, or is America the puppet for Britain? Anybody that's really looking at really what's been going on, is America just the facade for Britain? There's some, overwhelming evidence that really kind of questions a lot of what we really believe because of what happened in the Civil War, corporations and so forth. I'm here to tell you that all of those things, even if Britain might be the puppet master, those strings can be cut like that. And that was a finger snap instead of pounding the desk. But let me push the notes on societal history aside, and let's focus on this issue of abortion, or let's actually look at the culture of America. As we start, putting this whole context of abortion into context, or into our historical context. Remember, abortions lurked in the dark corners of our society and was illegal in every state of the Union from its founding. And then it was about World War II, where there was a lot of hyperbolic rhetoric about unwanted pregnancies. But let me actually get a little further back. I've told you that the Fabians had, and this is not just me, there's lots of people that talk about the Fabian Society. When they came to America, they started establishing doctrines of communism in academia in the late 1800s, early 1900s. The ISS was founded, I think, in 1906, and they literally became a legitimate enemy on American soil, working within to destroy us. And so World War II, by that point in time, and if you remember G. Edward Griffin's interview about a year ago, he came out and said when he graduated in the, I want to say the early 40s, mid 40s, after, during the wartime and so forth, he graduated with the paradigm of being a collectivist. And so you have to understand that the education system was completely infiltrated. The Scopes trial was designed to take, and it was one of the integral steps in moving us towards a godless and literally a communist education system. And that was in the 1920s. And so the progressives over this time were literally getting very good at convincing us, and they convinced the moral majority that we needed to reduce unwanted pregnancies and fornication. And so they introduced the solution in the 50s. And again, it was supposed to be the mechanism of improving morals, and it was called sex education. Well, shortly after they began teaching sex education, abortion was introduced as a form of unwanted pregnancies as a part of their curriculum, as well as a lot of the other perverted sex doctrines. So what do you want to do? If you want to start teaching morality, do you want to actually teach kids, of all these different perversions? You ought to go try these things. Or do you want to actually teach kids, the benefits of actually, abstaining until marriage and those types of things? What is it that if you're out to build the morals of society, you don't give them all the tools of decay? And that's what was basically baked into the curriculum. And so the problems with the school curriculum was abortion was still illegal. But this is where you start changing the mind and changing the culture of a nation. So that's how this was kind of all interlinked or dovetailed together. Because as we see what's going on, and you're probably wondering, how in the heck did we get to this point? Well, let's kind of look at this from a macro perspective. Again, I've said this before, it took Moses 40 years to change the culture of Israel to be able to enter into the promised land. So let's see how long it's taken for the progressives who are in the front for the communists. There's facade for the communists, right? It's the nice name, the liberals, the progressives, but they're communists. And their goal to change America's culture. And so if you understand, if you control the American education system or the education system anywhere, you have literally the tools necessary to changing the culture. Because if you historically look at it, they started introducing abortion as a one way of, taking care of the pill and these other things as science started catching up. That was one of the ways to help get rid of an unwanted pregnancy. But by the 70s, I am telling you, there were a couple of states, Washington State, New York State, were leaders in legalizing abortion before the Supreme Court ruled. And you got to understand, the moral people said, you know what, this is crazy. We can't go down this path. And so what they did, as I've told you before, every time you step into a court that has no jurisdiction, then you're going to lose. And that's exactly what happened with the Roe v. Wade. The federal court has no jurisdiction over abortion. It's not in the Constitution. If it's not in the Constitution, they have no jurisdiction over it. But the moralists said, well, let's subjugate ourselves, or at least those who were, and I'm using air quotes here, those who were self-proclaimed champions of the morals of America said, let's go to the Supreme Court. And in doing so, they knew we were doomed, at least I believe. Or if not, they were duped into believing that they could win. Because You always lose when you subjugate yourself to a court that has no jurisdiction. As soon as you step in that door, one way or another, they start moving you in the direction of compromise that they want you. They bend you over the barrel and you're done, literally done. And so let me get into these 45 goals. And so to do this, I'm going to actually read all the 45 goals. And I kind of want to go out and, editorialize each of these goals to say, where we are with this and, what the significance or importance of this is. And again, these goals were identified in W. Cleon Skousen's book, The Naked Communist, which I think was published in 1957. It was published, and then the birth of the John Birch Society came right after that. And so there was this huge awareness of, communism is our true enemy. It is the enemy within, and we have to fight this. So here's a question for you, because we talk about deep states, and I'm telling you, if you're a member of the NRA, I do not believe the NRA is the organization we think it is anymore. I believe that they've been penetrated. I believe that they are just, creating this facade, but they're actually supporting the movement of the wrong direction. And it's the same thing with the John Birch Society. I could go on, but the show isn't about the John Birch Society. But if you were going to give them a grade A to F on an organization, that's just a word from our sponsors. Thank you so much. Literally to the side. So let's get into these 45 goals that we have. And the first one that Cleon Skousen identifies is the U.S. acceptance of coexistence as the only alternative to atomic war. Now, you got to understand, you should understand this, because I've talked about the wiring of a communist. They will not sleep. They dream of subjugating you. When we of liberty believe that, well, we'll just coexist and we'll just agree to disagree, that means that we're giving them all the latitude to continually fight and come at us in different directions to beat us. We cannot accept coexistence. We should have plans, and we should have activities, and we should have design stratagems in literally undermining them the same way they're trying to undermine us, because they are the enemy. They're trying to take away our liberty, and we have to literally stop that. The second goal was U.S., and that goal has been accomplished. U.S. willingness to capitulate in preference to engaging in atomic war. That goal was completely compromised, and as the academics have literally gone out and said, we're better read than dead. And are you kidding me? That was the same philosophy that the Germans, I've talked about this, and not W. Cleon Skousen, Thomas Sowell, in his book, Intellectuals in Society. Go read that book. He talks about how that concept is literally a defeatist concept, and we are designed to literally capitulate. That is what it becomes second nature. When all of a sudden pressure comes on, oh, shoot, we might go to war. Let's just capitulate. Are you kidding me? As we are taught, we have to stand and fight and defend our honor with every last breath that we have. We have to defend our liberty. We have to defend our lifestyle. We have to defend the principles of liberty, period. We cannot capitulate. The third goal is develop the illusion that the total disarmament by the United States would be a demonstration of moral strength. Well, I'm telling you that they've actually been very good, and as a matter of fact, libertarians and a lot of people who cling on to the to the Constitution, all these C words, are literally willing to get to that, to say, you know what, we should be able to disarm, and we should be able to just say, hey, we have the moral strength. Are you kidding me? Peace through strength. That was Reagan's model, and there's lots of things I loved about Reagan. That was one of them. He basically said, if you want to enjoy peace, we have to show strength, and we have to show resolve. The fourth one, permit free trade between all nations regardless of communist affiliation and regardless of whether or not items could be used for war. And we're well beyond this. I mean, in the 50s, this was unfathomable that we would actually have free trade with a communist affiliated country, knowing that they would be giving our weapons of war or whatever it is so that that could be duplicated by the communists, because that's exactly what they've been doing. Well, we've gotten into goal 4, so we've got 41 more to go, and we're going to cover these things tomorrow, and I'll editorialize on them as we go along. So you're going to want to stay tuned.